Good morning everyone. I am Dr. Vijayashankar. Today we are going to take detailed class about vertical jaw relation. The main contents are introduction, definition, physiological rest position, methods of recording VDR, that is nothing but vertical dimension at rest, methods of recording vertical dimension at occlusion, sequelae of improper vertical dimension, conclusion. Coming to the introduction, complete dentures are constructed to function in the mouth as an integral part of the masticatory apparatus. Therefore, they should be designed to conform to the patient's physiological jaw relations. The accurate determination, recording and transfer of jaw relation records from edentulous patient to the articulator is essential. For the restoration of facial appearance and the maintenance of the patient's health. Unsatisfactory maxillomandibular relationship will eventually lead to failure of complete denture. A study by Lawson in 1959 has shown that in 200 dissatisfied patients examined, 60% of dentures had occlusal inadequacies, 45% had increased vertical dimension, and 30% had discrepancy between hinge relations and their cuspation. Jaw relations. Any relation of the mandible to the maxilla is defined as jaw relation according to the Glossary of Prosthodontics 8. The jaw relations are recorded in terms of orientation, vertical and horizontal. I am repeating, jaw relations are recorded in terms of orientation, vertical and horizontal. Coming to the vertical jaw relation, the vertical jaw relation are those established by the amount of separation of the maxilla and mandible in vertical direction. At the birth, the gum pad of the jaws were in contact. Eruption of teeth and the growth of alveolar process, jaws were forced apart, increasing the vertical dimension of the face. It is also believed that the same process occurred in reverse in old edentulous jaws. Coming to the vertical dimensions and distance, the vertical distance refers to the length of the face. It is maintained either by occlusion of the teeth or the balanced tonic contraction of the opening and closing muscles of mandibular movements. Vertical dimension at rest and vertical dimension at occlusion are the two measurable lengths of the face are important guides in making maxillomandibular relation records. Vertical dimension at rest, it is vertical separation of the jaws when opening and closing muscles of mandible are at rest in tonic contraction. It's according to the Glossary of Prosthodontics 8. The vertical dimension at occlusion, the length of the face when the teeth, occlusal rims, it is central bearing points or any other stop, or in contact and the mandible is in eccentric relation. Physiologic rest position of the mandible. In 1906, according to Gottlieb, it was a German named Polish who first defined the physiologic rest position of the mandible. He stated that the mandibular rest position was that position of the mandible wherein all the muscle action was eliminated and the mandible is passively suspended. He reported that in this position, the opposing teeth do not come in contact. Swanger in 1934 studied the postural position of the mandible by observing physiological act of swallowing. Rest position has been defined as neutral position of the mandible when the opening and closing muscles are in state of equilibrium. Thompson and Brody suggested that the position of the mandible in relation to the face and head is unchangeable as in the form of mandible, and the proportion of any face as far as the vertical height is concerned and are constant throughout the life. Niswanger, Bruce and Zeff apparently agree with this view. Leo of 1950 believes that this relation is not constant but is readily affected by age, disease and emotion. Physiologic rest position of the mandible. It is the position assumed by the mandible when the head is in upright position, the muscle, masticatory swallowing, speaking and respiratory are in equilibrium in tonic contraction and the condyles are in neutral, unstained position. The rest position is constant is each individual due to the fixed and only slightly variable tonus of masticatory muscles. The rest position is therefore not depend on the presence of the teeth or on their shape of position but depend on the musculature and on the muscle balance only. The rest position of the mandible remains fairly stable throughout the life of an individual unless it is changed by severe illness. It seems that constancy of a vertical maxillomandibular relation throughout the life represents the unique phenomenon not generally found in relation of other bones. The factors considered in vertical dimension at rest. The position of the mandible is influenced by gravity, therefore the mandibular positions are postural. The patient sitting upright or standing with the head erect looks straight ahead when the jaw relation records are made. Rest position is a relaxed position of the mandible where all the muscles are in tonic equilibrium. So very important point. Rest position is a relaxed position of the mandible where all the muscles are in tonic equilibrium. When a patient is tense or under strain, the nervous, tired or irritable, the value of measurements are questionable. When the dentist is under strain, nervous, tired or irritable, this condition also influences the jaw relation. Rest position is position in space not to be maintained for the definite period of time. The duration is very short. Therefore, the dentist should be prepared to make the measurements without delay when the position is assumed. Neuromuscular disorders is Bell's palsy. No one method for determining rest position can be accepted as being valid for all the patients. Therefore, it is advisable to use several methods and compare the results. Significance of rest position. It is bone-to-bone relation. In the absence of pathosis, the relation is fairly constant throughout the life. The position can be recorded and measured within the acceptable limits. It is used in determining the vertical dimension of occlusion. The methods of recording the vertical dimension at rest. Facial measurements after swallowing and relaxing, tactile sense, phonetics, facial expressions, and anatomical landmarks. The facial measurements you see in the diagram. The patient is asked to sit in upright and relax. Two reference points are marked as shown in the diagram, one on the top of the nose and chin, one on the tip of the nose and another one is on the tip of the chin. The patient is asked to perform functional movements like wetting his lips and swallowing. By doing these actions, the mandible will come into the rest position. The distance between these 2 points measured quickly before the mandible going to habitual position. The tactile sensation. 2 reference points are noted as the same above. The patient is asked to sit upright and open his mouth wide till he feels discomfort. Means he has to open his mouth very widely. Next, the patient is asked to close his mouth slowly. The patient is instructed to stop closing when he feels his muscles are totally relaxed and comfort. The distance between the reference points will give the vertical dimension at rest. This method relies on patient perception of relaxation and will vary from each individual. Anatomical landmarks. Released in 1935. Distance between the base of the nose to the lower edge of the mandible is equal to the distance between the pupil of the eye and the rim of the oris. Thus, he stated that vertical dimension can be considered correct if and when these two distances are coincident. Speech. 2 reference points are marked. The patient is asked to repeatedly to pronounce the word M, the Mississippi, etc. A certain number of times and the distance between the 2 reference points is measured immediately after the patient stops. Facial expressions. The following features indicate the rest position. The skin around the eyes and chin should be relaxed. The skin should not be stretched, shiny or excessively wrinkled. The nostrils are relaxed and breathing should be unobstructed. The upper and lower lips should have the slight contact in single plane. Electromyography. The rest position of the mandible can be determined by means of electromyography, which would record the minimal activity of the muscle. Electrodes can be placed on one or more muscles of the mastication to demonstrate their activation potential in the form of visual and audio signs, which are fed back to the patient to attain the mandibular position, showing nil or minimum EMG activity. Disadvantages. The equipment is too expensive. The operator should have the considerable knowledge, skill and experience. The patient should be capable of correlating the visual signs to the correct mandibular position. The methods of the determining vertical dimensions at occlusion we will discuss in the next class. Thank you very much.